Hello, welcome to yet another video. Today I'm showing you my first watercolor video on this channel. This time I'm painting Kainé from Nier, and I wanted to start off with showing you what watercolors I use. This is St. Petersburg Watercolors, sometimes called White Knights. I bought this set about 3 years ago now, and it was the first ever watercolor set I ever bought. I went ahead and cleaned my palette and made a new swatch card just to show you. These watercolors are relatively inexpensive compared to other brands. Here in Sweden it retailed for just under 300 Swedish crowns, which is about $30 US. Since I just started using watercolors 3 years ago, I'm really a beginner, but I've heard lots of other artists saying a lot of good things about this watercolor brand. And I've also heard that they are a little bit difficult to get your hands on in the US, but here in Europe it's fairly easy to find it. With that said, this brand has been really good for me because as a beginner, I didn't want to spend too much money on something new. And I've seen other artists compare these to really professional brands. So what I understand is that these perform pretty well compared to more expensive brands. Another thing that is new with this video that you might notice is that I'm filming from a new angle. And that's because I bought a new stand for my camera, and it's a GorillaPod from Joby. It is much smaller than the one I usually use, and it's also more flexible because I can put it closer to the drawing. And I just hope to achieve this feeling of you perhaps sitting next to me as I paint. I still have some things to learn though, because you might notice that the focus is shifting quite heavily, and I just need to figure out what distances I can place the camera for it to be able to focus. There's also this light issue with the lighting, and on the days when I filmed this, it was partly cloudy, so I was getting this mixed sunshine and sometimes it was just really dark. And I've tried to counteract that with my editing, so I just hope the lighting doesn't disturb you too much. But anyways, why am I drawing Kainé? I actually haven't played Nier myself, but I asked my followers on Instagram what they wanted me to draw this week, and Kainé was one of them that was suggested. Drawing her was a good practice for me because I feel like I need to practice doing more dynamic poses as well as other facial expressions except for just slightly content or happy. To get the pose right, I used a photo reference from SenshiStock on DeviantArt. Even though I had this reference photo, my biggest challenge was definitely the left hand. Hands are just very difficult to draw, I think, and I definitely need more practice drawing them. And then another challenge was her clothes. I think I've simplified the design quite a lot, because if you look at the original designs, there's a lot of ribbons going on and complicated patterns, and I initially added all the details in the first sketch, but then I realized that it would just be too much of a complicated picture to paint with watercolors. And that's just because when I thought of this piece, I wanted to practice not doing too much of fine lines as I do when I do marker art. So in other words, I wanted to avoid too many fine details on this drawing. I think watercolors have this charm of looking really good when it's added in a little bit of a not sloppy way, but not too mindful way. And using such a technique is quite different from when I use Copic markers, for instance, because there I really focus to stay within all the lines that I have drawn, and I also always ink the lines. And instead with this piece I wanted to be less precise and more adventurous with my coloring. I think watercolors are fun to use because I really like blending, and watercolors offer a really interesting way of blending colors, I think. It's very simple to add a little bit of another color to an already placed color. In some places in this drawing I have added some red where there is already a blue color, just to add some contrast. And you get a lot of variety of colors with watercolors since it's so simple to mix, and you can really get the exact shade that you want. Then again, it's less consistent than Copic markers, for instance, but that's also due to how good you are at mixing colors. And for me, I'm still a beginner, so I have a lot left to learn. With markers, you will have this same flat color regardless of when you use your pen. But with watercolors, if you mix a large amount of paint, then you will get a more consistent shade. But as a beginner, it's hard to know how much color you really need to fill in an area. And it's also difficult to know how much water you need to use to get the different kind of looks. And that's all about water control, knowing how much water you need in order to achieve the right finish. I have only ever used these watercolors, but I believe that the water control is affected by the kind of colors you're using. Like, are you using pans or are you using liquid watercolors, for instance? Because liquid watercolor probably needs less water to dilute. And I've also heard that liquid watercolors can be more pigmented than watercolors in pans. So I hope to someday get my hands on liquid watercolors and to compare them with pans. For now, I'm really enjoying the ones I have. I think they're lasting me so well, considering that I've owned them for 3 years. I haven't used them super much, I guess, but I still think they really hold up well. Even the colors that I use practically every time I paint still have more than half of the paints left in them. In my experience, they also hold up very well in very lit areas, directly exposed to sunlight. Because I have a few pieces framed in my living room where there is pretty strong sunlight, and I'm not really noticing any fading over time, which I think is really good, because that's something I can't achieve with my marker art. I have to place my finished marker pieces in a fairly dark room, and that's such a shame because I really want to display my artwork in a bright area so that you really notice the painting. And it just gets extra sad when you see the colors fading over time, because all the work you put in is kind of just fading away. So because of those reasons, I think I want to start using watercolors more. I want to get better at water control, and I want to get better at mixing colors and getting more even gradations. I also hope to make more spontaneous art with watercolors, and by that I mean pieces that aren't super planned from the beginning, because I think that would allow me to be more creative with my art and not so planned and precise. So my plan is to get a watercolor sketchbook that I can bring when I travel, and that makes me feel less compelled to make perfect pieces. There is nothing worse than getting stuck on a drawing just because you don't feel super satisfied with like the hand. Like in this piece, I I felt like quitting when I was drawing the hand. And it's funny because ever since I got my normal sketchbook, which I showed you in a previous video, I have been drawing so much more and so much more often than when I take these stray pieces of papers. And so before we end this video, I would really like to hear from you if you enjoyed this watercolor process video and what you thought about the angles from which I'm filming. Did you enjoy the previous stand more, or is this better? And as always, thank you for watching. Bye!